Hi, my name's Steve Martile, and in this video I'm going to be talking about how to order and receive from the universe. So before I get into how to set intentions and how to receive those intentions, I just want to set the context for this video. If you haven't watched any of my other videos, is that the basic premise is that your body, your biology is a sending and receiving antenna. Okay, your biology, right, your entire physiology is a sending and receiving antenna. Okay, now the signals that you're sending and receiving from this antenna is the same as that, like the lights that I'm using to in the background have electrical current going through those cables, those wires to create the light, right? So there's energetic, the light creates heat, but that energy starts from the current. Okay, so that current, for example, there's current when you have certain thoughts and have certain emotions. There's two things happening. One is there's electrical signals being passed from your brain to, for example, my arm in this case to move it, but also there's chemical signals. But what we're talking about specifically is the electrical signals. Now, when those electrical signals are fired, guess what happens? It creates a field. Okay, and the reason I'm sharing this is because it's obvious to me, because in engineering, when I was in school and university, and even in high school, it's common knowledge to any engineer that electrical current creates a field, a magnetic field. Well, you have currents, these electrical pulses of currents, actual electricity running through different parts of your biology. And because of that, you have these fields that you create. Pineal gland's another one, creates fields. Okay? So now with that out of the way, the reason I'm saying that is because your biology is basically an antenna for these subtler fields. And when I say subtler fields, I talked about in my last video in how to tune in to intuition or the voice of God or these subtler biofields or fields from the earth. They're very subtle. So if you have a noisy mind and you're thinking a lot and your self-talk is running like a mile a minute, and you have a coffee in the morning and then it keeps running, it doesn't help the purpose for you to connect with these signals. So the first thing is you got to ground yourself by doing some sort of meditation, yoga, being in nature, whatever you need to do for you, whatever works to ground you. And then once you get into the grounded state, then you pick up on the subtler vibrations, which are always being sent out and received by you anyways, but now you become aware of them, and that's the difference. So now that you know that, you're this basically a field of possibility that's sending an antenna, then sending out and receiving signals constantly, all the time, and then you get grounded and you're aware that you're actually getting these signals. Now you can order and receive from the universe, right? So how do you do it? So there's basically, the way I've broken it down, there's two parts. You're either intending something, which means you're sending out a signal, in other words, okay? Or you're receiving, which means you're receiving that signal, okay? And there's a group of subcategories, but the basic premise is that when you're looking to create something for the next year, okay, it could be for the upcoming year, it could be a business that you're in, it could be a relationship, it could be money, it could be a lot of different things, it could be health, a new home. You're doing one of two things at all times with your biology and the technology that you have in your biology. Okay, and if you don't know what I mean by technology in your biology, watch some of my other videos because I talk about the technology. But so you're only doing one of two things, and everything that, by the way, I should say this as well, everything that, if you wonder why people meditate, it's to get more connected to the technology and use it and apply it so that you get access to the information when it helps you make your life so much easier, right? At the end of the day, it's about making things easier for you in your life, okay? So we're either sending out signals, we're setting intentions, or we're receiving signals, okay? Now, this is something that took me a while to figure out as well. When you're sending, you're not receiving, and when you're receiving, you're not sending. Okay, I want to make that very clear. So for example, because this is something I thought for a long time, when you meditate or you visualize, that's the intention. You're sending out the signal, right? you're not going to get the answer necessarily in the same moment that you're sending out that signal. It's a different moment. And that's why I've broken these up into two different categories. You got sending and you got receiving. You're not doing both at the same time. You're doing one or the other. Okay? Perfect. And then I'll walk through them, how you can apply them to whatever goals or intentions you want to set. And sometimes the sending and the intention is easier than the receiving, so I'm going to give you both. But then I'm also going to explain some of the mistakes that you can make while running this process, okay? So there's three, in my overall look at things, there's basically going to be three ways that you can set intentions, okay? I just broke it down to three. Number one is you set an intention. And when you set an intention, it could be as simple as, you picture what your life would be like, you visualize, or when you meditate, you contemplate and think, what would it be like to have that in my life? To have either that experience, to have something show up, or to have any outcome in your life. Okay, so it's an experience, it's an outcome, or it's something physical. Okay, we're not talking about magic here. We're talking about creating with your biology. Okay, so the way you do that is you set an intention. You set an intention by thinking of, okay, something that you want to create, which is an outcome or something that you want to experience. Okay, so that's the first part. And the more clear you are about this intention, the better. Okay. Number two, once you set an intention, the next thing you want to do is you want to get into alpha. And what do I mean by that? That's the brain wave. That's a certain brain wave that you emit in a certain state throughout the day. Now, you're naturally in alpha state, okay, when you wake up in the morning and when you go to sleep at night. So, a good time to set intentions is in the morning or at night. Okay, that's going to be the easiest, because otherwise you have to get into alpha. To get into, and let me just give you an example. Alpha is like that state you wake up, and you're groggy. You're kind of in the dream world, but you're kind of aware of the physical world, and you're kind of in between. You're in between worlds. That's alpha state. Now, if you daydream during the day and you're like lying on the couch or whatever on the sofa, and you're just kind of like taking a nap, whatever, and you're kind of daydreaming but you're not fully asleep, that's another time you can set an intention. So timing's key, or you have to learn how to induce it yourself without using drugs or alcohol. Like, learn how to induce those states, which you can. I teach people how to do that with the meditations that I do. So those are the three options. You do it in the morning, you do it at night, or during the day, whenever you feel in that alpha state. Or you induce that state. You create it for yourself, which, again, like I show clients how to do, okay? So you set an intention and you get into alpha. Okay, so far so good? Now, so remember, when you go to sleep and you wake up in the morning, you're in alpha. So you need to know what your intention is before you wake up in the morning. So you want to think about what that is, write it down, get very clear about what that is before you wake up, the next day. Now, these intentions, the size of them is completely relative to your experience. It could be writing and publishing a book. It can be like building a business. It could be attracting someone that you want to partner with for the rest of your life. Or it could be much smaller. It could be like, you just need to get a quick win or a raise at work, or it could be as small or big as you want, okay? And I'm going to talk about that more as we get into the process, but the size is entirely up to you. So you set an intention, a clear intention, you get into alpha state, and then number three, you feel as if it's done, okay? That's it. That's how you set intentions. Now, I'm going to go into receiving in a minute, but I want to talk about some of the mistakes you can make with the intentions. Actually, you know what? I'm going to come back to the mistakes at the end, because this is very common, but I'll go through the receiving. So that's setting the intention. That's when you're sending out signals. You're using the pineal gland to send out signals, and those signals are being distributed through the magnetic fields of the planet. Other people pick them up, right? That's when other people's like, I got to call Steve, or I got to call you, right? Or I need to email that person. They're picking up on the signals that you've sent out in your intention, okay? But that's how to do it. Okay, you know what? I'm going to go through the mistakes. So here's some of the mistakes. Number one is if you don't feel as if it's done, okay, actually, this is probably a bigger one. You set an intention, you feel as if it's already done, but you don't go into a deep alpha state. And if you don't go into an alpha state, what happens is you're just doing surface intentions. And what I mean by a surface intention is that you're doing an intention that's just at the conscious mind level, not at the subconscious. If you want to get to the deeper unconscious, which controls and orchestrates all things, which you can call the universe or the voice of God, if you want to get to that deeper level where you're communicating with the Creator and getting a really good signal to the Creator, you have to go to at least an alpha state. If you don't, this is a mistake. This is almost like a common thing that I've done as well. Like you'll be like, okay, I'm going to go daydream. And then I go daydream, but I'm kind of lying there, but I'm not, I'm in beta, like I'm in high beta, which means, my brain's pretty active. There's a lot of self-talk going on, not very quiet inside. I'm not in that trance state where I feel like energy, space, the wave. I feel like my body. I feel like waking day. I'm like ready to go. And when you're in that state, you're not going to be able to penetrate the subconscious. And if you don't, you're not going to get into alpha, and it's going to be difficult to feel as if it's done. And what happens is you just set in a surface intention. So you're getting 1 out of 3. And that surface intention is just in the conscious mind, which again doesn't get to the universe or the infinite intelligence that orchestrates this entire universe that we're in. So if you want to get to the Creator level where you're co-creating with the Creator, you got to get into alpha. Okay? So like I said, if you're new to this, best thing you can do is start in the morning. You wake up, have an intention, boom, get an alpha, feel as if it's done. Okay? So that's one mistake. The second is when you feel as if it's done, and this is not so much a mistake, this is just like an obstacle you might run into. You think of what it's like each step, right? Like if you're looking to build a business, you might be like, okay, I just want to make my first dollar or $100 or $1,000 online. And you kind of see the steps of feeling what it's like to make that. But what I'm saying is get to the very end where you have all these clients, you have an abundance of clients, you have a process, you can deliver, clients are excited to work with you. Get to the very end and then feel as if it's done, right? If you want to travel a year from now and you want to go around the world and tour around the world, start looking at photos, start watching videos, and then when you wake up in the morning, contemplate, think about what you saw in those videos and images as if you're doing it and you're the one traveling around the world. Go to the very end, okay? And then that's all I'll say about that at this point. But setting intention, remember, we're either doing one of two things. You're either sending out a signal or you're receiving. So that's setting the intention, okay? Now you've done half the work. What's the other half? It's receiving. So the first thing you do when you're receiving is you wait and see what happens. And this is really hard for a lot of people because they're always, and this is a cultural thing in North America at least, and it perpetuates everywhere. If you do more, you'll make more. And if you make more, then you can do more. But it's always about the doing. And when I say wait and see what happens, I'm saying get to a state of knowing, of being aware, of not trying to do anything. I'm not trying to go anywhere. I'm not trying to fix anything. I'm not trying to be a solution. And just notice what happens. Just notice what happens. And I'll give you a really good example. So I had set an intention for some amazing people to come on board as clients. And I was in my meditation. I'd come out, I'd done these 3 things, and I felt amazing. It was complete. About 3 or 4 hours later, I was out on my laptop and I got an idea. It was very subtle. And if I was in a noisy mind, had had coffee or whatever, I wouldn't have picked up on it. But it came to me and I immediately acted on it, which is the second one, right? Wait and see what happens. I got an idea and I acted on it, what feels right. And I'm like, woo, this is a good one. And I started this pretty generic marketing campaign that I do once a year. I do it around this time of year, around the end of the year. And I immediately got people interested in speaking to me about this opportunity. And then what I did is booked calls with these people and I've got one today, and I've got one tomorrow, and just kind of so on. But also knowing that I'm just following what feels right. Okay, so I'm waiting to see what happens. I act on what feels right. I wait and see what happens. I act on what feels right. And then the third thing is I recognize the synchronicity when I see it. And this is important, the part of receiving, because what you're saying is, thank you for recognizing that I've set an intention, and now that you're coming to me to fulfill the intention that I've set, the outcome that I've set for myself. Thank you for, you're thanking yourself almost. At some level, you're thanking your higher guides. You're thanking the energy for cooperating with you. You're thanking that there isn't even a process that you can do this to manifest what you want. But you're in a state of appreciation when you notice see what happens, you act on it, and when you get better results, the results from that, even though it's not the end result, the outcome, but it's something that is inevitably moving you towards that outcome, you recognize the synchronicity of it, and you're like, wow, and you appreciate it. And as you do that, guess what happens? You then do the same process the next day. You set an intention, you get into alpha, you feel as if it's done. But this time, you're feeling it from a place that it's done, knowing that the synchronicity has already occurred and you were the cause of it. And then that starts to build momentum. So I've got these calls booked, right? Well, guess what happens? We're doing more marketing and I see more calls coming in and I recognize and feel as if it's done. So guess what happens? It's rinse and repeat. The more that you set the intention, you don't stop. It's not like you do it one time and then you act, you wait and see what happens, you act on it, and then notice the synchronicity and appreciate it. Well, you start the day again and you do the same thing. You feel as if it's done. But this time it's easier because you've already seen some sort of synchronicity that's like, wait a minute, this is the breadcrumb that's saying, I need to move, keep moving, keep moving. And then you do it again. Now what happens is you keep setting the intention day after day after day. You may like, do I keep setting the same intention? Do I keep doing the same thing? The energy of this intention is going to change because you're starting to connect and become it. And because of that, the intensity of the feelings you get, which is those electrical charges and those magnetic fields, those biofields, begin to change, refine, and become even more intense. And as that happens, this starts to accelerate as well, where you wait and see what happens, you act on what feels right, you recognize when you see it. Now here's something that you can do that will put you off track, to get you off timeline. Okay, so remember, you're creating this intention, you're moving to a new timeline. If you're on a 3 hertz timeline, you're moving to 5 hertz. Things are happening, you set your intention, you go back and forth. You're sending, you're receiving, you're sending, you're receiving, okay? Now, here's what's gonna happen for probably 8 out of 10 of you, because it happened for me. You're doing this part, but then instead of waiting and seeing what happens, you're like, okay, now I got to take lots of action. And you like take lots of action, take lots of action, takes lots of action. And because you weren't waiting to see what happens and you weren't present and you were in the mind, you missed it when something came to you that was like, I need to talk to this person, or I have an idea or whatever. You glanced over it, or you ignored it, or you said, oh, that won't work. Okay, because you have self-esteem or self-worth blockages, energy blocks in your lower sacral area. And if that happens, well, now the whole sequence is you're not receiving. And this was something that happened to me over and over again, is because I was doing this part, I was setting the intention, but then when it came to receiving, I wouldn't acknowledge myself as being worthy of receiving that because I had blockages, energy blocks. So in that case, if that's you, you got to clear those energy blocks. There's a link down to my calendar. If that's something you want to do, we'll just jump on a call and chat. But that's something that can prevent this process from receiving. It's always, if 9 to 10 times, the receiving is going to be because you don't feel worthy of the thing you set the intention for. And because you don't feel worthy of it yet, it can't come to you. You always miss it. When you wait and see what happens, you miss it. And when you totally miss it, it's gone. It's like the bus came and the stopped at your stop sign, or your bus stop, and then it's gone. And you didn't jump on the bus. And because you didn't jump on the bus, you didn't act on what feels right, you missed it. So you set your intention again, the next day happens, you felt good, you feel as if it's done. You come out the next day, you're like just noticing, watching, you're very present. Bus comes again. Bus comes again. This time, you're thinking about something else. You missed the bus. You weren't paying attention to the bus. The bus stops. It rings a couple times. And then it takes off. You didn't act on what felt right. Because you didn't, you missed the bus again. That's what it's like. That's just a metaphor, like an analogy to explain what it's like when you don't feel worthy of the thing that you've intended for. You can't receive it. Now, for the other, 2 out of 10 people, they're going to be able to go through this process and they'll say, I'll wait and see what happens. I'll act on what feels right. I'll recognize the synchronicity when I see it, and you'll just do it. Okay? The only other thing that may go wrong, that a challenge you might discover as you're going through and learning this process and developing the skills, which is a really important part of this, is that you're waiting to see what happens and you're being present, but then you don't have the courage to act on what feels right, which again is, to me, a very clear indicator that there's some sort of blockage of energy. Because if you were able to get the information and you saw the bus come up and you're like, oh, okay, this is my turn. This is, but then you didn't feel the courage to go and do it. Again, it's just like you can't get your legs to go there. Energetically, you're not resonating with that, receiving with that. So maybe you got to go back and either do one of 2 things. You refine your intention so it's more in line with the heart. Would have been a good idea to put this here from the very beginning, because if you feel as if it's done, it's going to feel amazing. You're going to feel in heaven. Okay? And then refine it, change the intention, get into alpha, feel as if it's done. And if you feel like you're in heaven, you've got the right intention. That's the one that's picked you. And then you wait and see what happens. You act on what feels right, and you recognize the synchronicity. If you find that you're waiting and see what happens and nothing's happening, it means you're not getting the download, then it can be that when you set the intention and you got into alpha, you didn't get very intense feeling as if it's done. And if you didn't, then the information can't be downloaded through the pineal gland for you to receive it. Okay? I hope you found this at least some value to give you a guide in terms of how to set your intentions and how to order and receive from the universe. Okay? Practice it, give it a shot, see how it goes. Do it for a week. If it's going well and you're starting to notice the synchronicities, go back again, set the intention, receiving. Remember, you're either sending an intention, sending out signals, or receiving. You're either doing one of the 2. And that's the entire, if there's one purpose for your body, it's to do this. That's what your body's for. You can use the body for a lot of different things, but this is probably one of the most important and most valuable things that you can learn on this planet, in this carnation, is to use your body to do this, to basically order from the universe. I hope you found this useful and helpful. My name's Steve. Thanks for watching and listening. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. Please share it with someone if you feel they'll get value from it. And if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. Thanks for watching and listening. If you're interested in an energy clearing session with me, again, there's a link below. The way it works is basically you book some time with me. And once we've got time booked, we get on the phone and see, or Zoom, and we see, is this something I can help you with? And if I can, I'll explain how it works and what the investment is to do it. Okay? Awesome. Have an amazing rest of your week. Thanks for watching and following my channel on YouTube. We'll talk to you next time.